You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Sam Whitfield.
How you doing, sir?
Mr. Sam, sir is my father. I am Robbie. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Sam.
Well, I am the host of a political podcast, kind of a political and pop culture podcast called the Whitfield Report. And in addition to that, I am also a college student, and I'm from Colorado, but now I live in Florida. So
I actually have something to mention about Florida. Are gators that much of a problem there?
um, not where I live. I kind of live near the Sarasota, Tampa area. They're not a big problem out here, but like I guess down in Miami they're a big problem, but that's like the one part of Florida that I've never been to. So I don't really
Because I'm hearing all this
know.
stuff come out in the news about meth gators, like people flushing meth down the toilet and then alligators end up eating it like a sewer gator. I'm like, oh my God, like Florida, why? All they want to do is golf. Like, just let them golf. It's like the place to retire.
Well, I mean, so the thing that like all those Florida man jokes is they are true, but from what I've heard from like a lot of people who grew up here, like a lot of those Florida man jokes are actually like people that moved here from like the far south, and then they end up doing like retarded shit here.
Oh, yeah, they're unexperienced to what the land's like. It's like if I moved out to Texas and saw a dude on a horse, I would automatically assume everybody has a horse.
Yeah, something like that. But even then, I'm like, but that still doesn't explain like stories like you hear of like a Florida guy like bringing an alligator through like a drive-through and whatever, and I'm like, why?
Because
So
why not? There's not a law that says he can't do that.
so
First thing I did when I was looking at what types of things I want to spend my money on, I looked up what exotic pets I could own, and I saw the list of options I can't have and the very few specific ones I can. I can't have any large feline cats. I'm East Coast, so I'm just like you a little bit. You're a little bit way farther down south. I'm more up near Delaware and Baltimore area. But
yeah.
like in my area, like you can't just have a jungle cat, but in Texas, it's legal to own a tiger. And there's actually more tigers in Texas than all of the world, which does not make any sense. But
Yeah, yeah, Texas is like a really weird place. It's kind of like its own country almost.
it's America. When you think of
Yeah.
America, you think Texas. You don't think, you think either DC or Texas.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. Yeah, Texas is pretty much America, and they act like it too, or at least, that's like Texas is America before like all this politically correct stuff took over. So now like now everyone wants to move there just because like regardless of like what political ideology you are in Texas, like you're well, I mean it is mostly, conservative-ish, but like most people in Texas just don't like have problems. They don't start shit very much is what
Well,
I've
they
tended
they
to
they
notice.
have a comfortability factor because their environment, which actually, like, I have a lot of questions, obviously, about society, but like besides the podcast, let's just let everybody know, what do you do professionally? Like, what gets you money? Are you just a full-time student?
Yeah, pretty much right now I'm a full-time student, and I I'm going into a field called technical communications, which is basically like most people think of like freelance writing and then like doing uh, work for companies. It's not marketing, but essentially it kind of is because you do like a lot of public relations work for like different companies and like a lot of smaller uh, businesses around here in Florida and other places need that, especially like in Silicon Valley in the tech industry. So that's kind of where I'm looking at getting into after I finish college. So
So like you seems like such a kind of like not very loud, not very outspoken person. How did you decide to get into the world of politics? Because that seems like it's a dog eat dog environment.
it is, well, and I mean, I can be very outspoken sometimes, but I also like to kind of consider myself to be somewhat civil and whatnot. Like that's what I
More
like to try and.
rationally thinking, I would say.
Yeah, correct. So that's interesting because um, I actually got into politics when I was young, just because I was one of those kids where, like, when I was growing up, like, history and current events were always kind of like the subjects in school that I always did really well at, particularly. And then I really started getting into politics because when I was in eighth grade, that was the year the McCain and Obama, that was that whole election. And so I remember we had to like research the different candidates at the time. And I remember looking at Obama and his voting record, like, as far as his appearance and whatnot goes, he was like a very eloquent speaker. He could really get crowds motivated. But when it came to his actual like voting policy on his voting record as like a junior senator, there were very few things that he actually voted on. Like while he was in attendance, he would just like absolutely abstain from voting from like 80% of like whatever bills were being voted on. And I thought, well, that's a little odd.
Well, do you
um
think, well, I mean, you got to take into the whole aspect. I try and look at things from both sides. I think the system, at least the government, is pretty corrupt. You probably don't agree, but I
oh yeah, I would actually completely agree with that.
I see I find flaws when we look at what we're built upon a little bit. Not just our country, but people in general. I try and look at everyone in the grand scale of things. I think America's awesome. I think it gives us so many freedoms and liberties to be able to do what we truly desire if we have the willing and drive to put in for it. But there are some sketchy little black tape lines. You're wondering, why is it black tape? And like I said, but that's a problem with anything. There's always
Sure,
going to be
sure.
problems with anything you do, whether it's good, whether it's bad, it doesn't matter. So when you look at the job of being a president, I try and take into the aspect, like, I can't dive anything politically because I don't have the balls to run a country. I don't want that pressure. You see it when they go into their term, and by the end of their term, they're older. They look like they went through 20-year transformation, even though it's only might have been 2 to 4 years.
Oh, sure, sure. And I'm not really denying that. And also, like, kind of going back to my story, like, keep in mind I was in eighth grade too at the time. So I guess kind of what got me started into this whole thing wasn't only the politics of it all, but like, so I remember bringing that factor up to like some folks that, like, hey, Obama's voting record is kind of, weird. Now, keep in mind, I was just talking like his voting record, and like I got called. That was like the first time I got called a racist for simply questioning like his voting record. Like, I didn't bring up, the fact that he was like African American or anything like that, but still, like, like I got implications that I was a racist. And so I guess kind of what got me started was this whole like politically correct culture that, like, you can't, that like everything's kind of tabooish and we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And
Yeah, I agree. I see. The fact is, a lot of people are very, very sensitive today, but I think that comes from like I said, I try and see it from both sides of the perspective, mostly because people feel like they don't have a voice. And they feel like the best way for them to do that is to also bitch and complain about really, really small stuff, which isn't the real grand scale of things. I
sure, sure.
I think you can chalk up to the same thing why somebody would be like, well, you hate this country, then leave. Like, we don't want you here then. If you're not going to benefit us, that makes sense. I see it from his side. Like, you ever been in a room where just everybody is complaining and bitching and then having that happen over and over and every single day? It gets so annoying. You're literally like, I can't handle this anymore.
Yeah, well, and I mean to be fair, so I mean like I would generally consider myself to be like a conservative libertarian type. I definitely so I mean the right has flaws too, and the Republicans have flaws too. I think neither party is perfect, and I mean I think it is kind of time for like a third party, maybe like independent uh candidate. Or I mean I'm not sure like the logistics of it, but I do think that the two party system kind of sucks. More than that though, I think our problems in society, at least from what I've noticed, kind of tended to start when social media came out. And I mean, that's not to say that there aren't some good aspects of social media, but I think one of the big problems that we have is now people mainly talk to each other over screens, endlessly throughout the day. And we don't really have human interaction as a society anymore.
Yeah,
So,
I got a big problem with that because dude, I just went out and did a little bit of groceries, shopping, stuff like this, and I missed like 4 calls and I was in the store 20 minutes. Like, I just realized if I had that phone in my pocket, that 20-minute grocery store trip would have turned into 4 hours, but I was sitting there talking on the phone, not doing what I want to do and not interacting with people anymore.
right.
Like, we are totally disconnected from one another anymore. We don't know the actual problems going on in even our loved ones' lives. And that's because we're too focused on our devices. And when you look at our devices, the first thing you're getting is like a news report. There's always something as soon as you hit Safari on your phone, it's showing you like the latest things of what's going on in the world today. And it's a lot of bad shit. It's not anything really good. Like, you have to scroll through to find the good stuff. I'm like, I think they should open it up to you, like, like holding the door open for you and then kind of like shutting the second one, like not opening up the second one. Like, at least give me like a good news and then hit me with some bad news. Don't just feed me nothing but constant bad bullshit. I'm like, every country has problems. Every country experiences them at different levels, and they also adapt to the situations they've been there. I think a lot of people overlook that, and they see the fact that, oh, like they always kind of compare to another country. I'm like, stop comparing yourself and just look at what we're dealing with too. Everyone wants to go out about Trump and everyone wants to go out about somebody. No president has done it right. None of them. None of them. And the reason why is I chalk it up to Joe Rogan's bit. Like, either man or woman, it doesn't matter. That job is ridiculous. You can't have a job where one guy runs a whole country of people. You can't have a bunch of people
Yeah.
running a thing. It's got to be a group effort here. Every single individual here, doesn't matter if you've broken the law, doesn't matter if everyone has to have a voiced opinion. Not everyone is going to agree, but they take the majority and they choose that answer. I'm like, you got to understand, it's so ridiculous, the fact that we live together, everyone lives together. That is ridiculous. You can't live with your family for 2 weeks every single day, seeing them at every hour, every minute, and not get sick of them. You want to break out and you want to go do things. This is why we have jobs, also to pay bills and stuff. But you have to realize, it's a bunch of people crammed into one spot. You can't live with people and you can't live without them. It's a really weird double entendre type thing.
Yeah, it certainly is weird. I mean, I think kind of the other thing too that you were hitting on, and I'm also, I take it you're a big Joe Rogan fan, and I mean, so am I. I really like Joe's podcast. But I mean, I think the one of the things that you hit on is people like to, blame Trump or blame whoever. And one thing I've noticed is that like people under people have said, oh, things are worse than ever under Trump, like he's constantly trying to divide us. Again, this kind of goes back to my whole thing of social media because, like, okay, so Obama was president when a lot of these social media companies came to kind of fruition, and I think maybe it was coincidental that he was just president. But like I said earlier, like I think a lot of these social media platforms, and listen, I use them, so I'm not like completely bashing on them. But again, I think our interaction and just the way we interact with people and the fact that we don't talk to each other anymore as a society, I
Yeah,
think that's really what has screwed us over in the long term.
yeah, you don't know, like, the fact that family dinners are happening less and less, more they're very, very rare nowadays. Sometimes, like, it all depends on your cultured environment. I think what the world really depends on is your moral value of what you consider to be valuable, what you consider to be important. It all differs person to person. But you can tell when a terroristic threat, let's say, happens, the fact that everyone totally forgets about race, totally forgets about color, totally forgets about anything. And they decide, like, hey, we're people. We need to work together to solve this. Like, there's whatever conflicts we have, that doesn't matter at this point because we need to focus on this immediate threat. I'm trying to figure out why it takes something so impactful like that for people to really start to actually just be kind of like passive towards one another. Just because you don't agree doesn't mean you need to make their lives miserable because they don't agree. I mean, I only started listening to Joe Rogan when I was looking up videos of Gavin McInnes. I don't know if you know who Gavin McInnes is.
Oh yeah, I know who Gavin McGinnis is, and I know who Alex Jones is, and
Yeah, but
I'm
that man has like a really, 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 really character-like role. Gavin does, but I see where he's trying to do that because it gets people pissed off at him for the shit he says because a lot of people are too sensitive to the stuff he says. I'm like, but you got to look at the realest terms. Like when he chalked up his example for race, he doesn't believe racism exists. And it does exist, but the way he was putting it in terms is if you're sitting at a bar, you're drinking, watching a football game, and then some dude comes up and starts same team and everything, and starts like talking to him. The dude's not gonna not talk to him and like this conversation with this guy just because you go, oh, you're a black man. Like the way he put that in terms is true, but the idea that make we judge a book by their cover. We look at someone and we judge them like, oh, they don't look like me, so they're going to be different from me. When in haps, you could be one and the same. You could practically relate on everything. That guy could be your best friend, but you're never going to take the time to know that if you don't take the time to experience and know the person, which is the whole reason why I even started this podcast. I thought
and
the concept was you need to at least talk to someone, whether it's an hour, whether it's 2 hours, just have a conversation. We don't do it anymore.
by the way, real quick, I do want to interject and just say that I'm really thankful that you have me on because I've because there are other shows kind of like yours that say, well, I'm open to talk to anyone, and then I've broached them similar like I broached you, and then they'll look at my page and then they'll be like, oh, you're a political guy. Yeah, I don't really want that on my podcast. That's too controversial or too edgy. And I mean, I don't even think I'm that edgy of a guy. I mean, granted, like I said, I am kind of conservative-ish. I like Gavin, I like Alex Jones, but I'm more of a conservatarian. And I mean, I'm not going to bite your head off. Or at least try not to, unless you're being really just blatantly and flagrantly retarded and attacking me or something. And I don't mean you specifically. I just mean in
Yeah,
general.
people in general. Well,
So
that's what people do when they don't understand and they have a one-sided mind. I try and stay as open-minded as possible. I podcast with people I don't agree with only because
yeah,
of how I was raised and how things have happened. And but I don't sit there and tell them, well, that's not right. That's not right. I sit there and go, oh, okay, I see how you're thinking of it. I dived into the realm of psychology in school because I had a fascination with how humans think differently from one another. I started realizing, like, oh shit, there are people out here that are experiencing the same type of things I have. We're actually very closely related, and also we are so very unique. I think people truly lose that, and people try to associate themselves with like-minded individuals and think anybody else that isn't thinking like them is wrong, which I think it's not true. I think that it's really stupid how there's always two things you can't bring up in a conversation at a dinner table, and some people it differs, but I think it's religion and politics. We can both probably agree on that. Usually, when you bring up something like that at like a dinner or just going out in conversation, you find people are very, very like, "Whoa, did you just bring that up?"
Definitely. And I mean I think also kind of where I'm at is like I have some like generally I would say I'm more conservative, but there are also some things where I'm like more liberal and not really like liberal in the sense of like I'm hardcore left. Like, for example, like I would just describe myself kind of my politics as like I'm very pro, Second Amendment, pro gun. I believe that you should be able to kind of own whatever firearm you want to as long as you're responsible. And I also believe that you should be able to like have a pot plant in your yard and like smoke,
Well,
marijuana
you're
if
all
if
about
you
being
want.
rational. Like that's what you're saying. You're all about being rational. See, the problem is people like I'll even accuse myself of this. Just looking at your like podcast page and seeing that you're like, I see, oh, you're like you were saying, oh, people won't want to podcast with you because you're a political guy. I see that, but at first making the claim like, oh, he's all about politics, I also thought in the second thought in my head, trying to see it from your perspective, where you're interested about something that's going on in our country and you're showing that this is what you're interested in. Okay, that doesn't define you as a person. That defines what you like, what you enjoy. Which, like I said, we're having a rational podcast right now. We're having a conversation. There's no arguments. There's nothing going on. There's nothing
Right.
like you're right wing, I'm left wing, you're conservative. There's none of that. It's just talking. And the whole factor is a lot of people can't look past what someone's interested in. So people are too afraid to be themselves. They're truly afraid to show who they truly are. They want to hide it and put on this type of disguise. And I'm like, just show who you are. Like cuss. I think the factor in more people need to do is they need to cuss in their everyday lives, not just out of anger, but just cuss. Just do it. The
I
sense of relief
I
you get from a nice like shit, like it doesn't mean like I've been told so many times like, whoa, are you angry? I'm like, no, I'm not angry, I just curse. Like, you know how on like stress relieving it is just dropping a nice shit, like not like an actual literal shit, but like like just saying the word. And like it people are like, oh, my ears, like, oh, my sensitive fragile virgin ears. I'm like, I know you do it, I know you cuss all the time. It's like, don't hide just a word. The fact that that's stigmatized is getting a little bit ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean I love to drop the F bomb quite a lot. And it's not necessarily even because like I'm pissed off, but like, like if it's actually not too hot here right now because it's like in the morning, but like when it gets really hot out in the afternoon, I'll just be like, fuck, it's hot out. And some people are like, well, you do live in Florida, there's no reason to be pissed off about it. And I'm like, I'm not pissed off. I'm just like acknowledging that like, fuck, it's hot out, or like, you know,
I'm
something
like,
like that.
sweating my
But
balls
yeah,
off over here. You say something like that, and they're like, whoa, 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 sir, this is an establishment. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Well, I
well,
realize
I mean,
I'm in a public place. I probably shouldn't have said that. But at the same time, it's really like you don't want to be cussing in front of children, obviously. You want to try
right.
and like be
And
like, hey, don't get that sense of thing going on. But at the same time, you have to let them know, like, you got to be real. I think the world needs a little bit more realism in it. Like, people need to understand, yeah, there's problems. Me sitting here bitching about them is not going to, you know, it's not going to fix anything. So unless I put the drive in to do it.
and like and like at the same time too, like obviously I have a filter and you have a filter too. Like, if I'm like in a professional meeting. Obviously, I'm not going to curse, like right, you know, then and there, depending on the situation. Like I'm going to be professional, but like but then like if I go to a bar with like my coworkers during the off hours, then yeah, I mean I'm going to swear a lot more and whatnot. And I mean that's kind of the other thing too is like um I just think that society has become like a lot. It's weird because we're not necessarily like religiously prudish as a society, but we kind of are getting that there too. Like I was reading like an opinion column where like this columnist was complaining that like NFL cheerleaders and like NFL cheerleaders are too suggestive, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well, that's like going
Like
to Hooters and you're expecting not to see like boobs or an ass. Like that's the idea of the thing. And then feminists that are going to try and be like, that's against women. I'm like, but they're not being forced to work there. They're just working there because they decided God or whoever they genetically got boobs and an ass, they might as well use it to make money. Like they're trying to
right,
do the
well,
best of what with what you have.
Well, and it's not even like NFL cheerleaders. Like it's not even like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders or any of those squads are even like that suggestive compared to like you know like Pornhub or something like that. Like I can understand that, but like if you're complaining like NFL cheerleaders or something like that, you know you've got like way too many first world problems. So.
I think if you're too busy kind of putting a stress or aggression out on somebody else over some small shit, like having more than like I do it sometimes too. I catch myself all the time doing it and I realize it's a problem, but I don't act upon it. I try and look at that as more as an immediate thing in my life. Like I'm experiencing some type of stress in my life and I'm going to yell at this woman in front of me with 48 items in the 12 item or less thing.
Oh,
I'm like,
sure,
you got to
sure.
stop yourself in moments of that sort and realize you cussing out some woman, which I wouldn't do, especially an elderly lady, because like I said, those are all based upon morals. But like you got to understand, you just telling her like, really, you got 48 items in this 12 item or less, like it's 12 item or less. She's just looking at you like, I can tell you if I have one item and there's a person with 48 items in front of me, they mostly let me go in front of them. Like, oh, you want to go in front? I'm like, thank you, sir. And I now kind of do that at the store a little bit more. I try and buy one item. Like if I'm just going in, like need a drink or something, I'll just walk in, grab a drink, and I'll be like, sit behind somebody with like a lot of items, and I'll see if they'll let me go in front of them. And 99.9% of the time, it's mostly like they just let me go in front. Now that might be the area I'm associated in, but I think people understand like yeah, they have somewhere to be. They have to be in a rush. But if they're not truly closed minded, they'll be like, all right, well, it's not going to, it's not that important. I can let this kid take a minute in front of me real quick. And then I'm gone. Like I give them the exact change. I know exactly it comes out to $2. Give them $2. Bam, walk right out. Keep the change receipt. I don't need it. Walk out. I just test
Well,
them.
I mean, yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's the other thing too is I think that we're all kind of in a rush to get to get somewhere. To sometimes like unnecessarily to like. Granted, I understand like if you're running work, if you have to like run to work or run to a job or something like that or run to class, like I get that, but like it it seems like like if you can't take like one moment out of your day just to say like hello to someone and just be like nice to them too, or just be like polite, then like that's another thing too is like just be like just try and be like good to people, and that doesn't mean that like you have to like suck up to people and be like nice to everyone. There are going to be
Yeah.
assholes in the world, but like just like take like like a, a minute or two or however long it takes you to go out to the mailbox to like say hi to your neighbor or something,
Yeah.
even if they don't say hi back or
You gotta have a
something.
sense of people being overreactive to maybe an internal conflict as well. I think
Right.
not just one, but there's many factors that chalk up to how a person acts, whether it's their experience in the past, whether, you know, if you try certain food, don't like it, you're not going to want to try it again. I think you always have to constantly refresh yourself, kind of clean yourself off, start over anew, and try and focus on a little bit of things like, why are you so aggressive right now? You're probably experiencing conflict in your own life right now that you're taking out on someone else that doesn't deserve it. But the problem is
Yeah,
with the world today, people throw it out because they feel like they can, and it's justified because they know what's going on in their life, and the other person's just like, holy shit, man, you didn't need to, shut the door on me and tell me to go like kill myself or something just because, you missed a car payment. I'm sorry. Like, that dude has no idea what's going on in your life. So I try and see it from their perspective too, like maybe chalk up like, oh, they're experiencing something.
yeah. Well, and I'll also try and be the guy that, like, as like as sappy as this may sound to you, like if I'm having like a bad day or something, like I won't announce it to like the whole world, but like if I seem like kind of like in a in like a bad mood, like I'll tell people sometimes, like, hey man, like, I'm sorry if I'm being a bit snappy. I'm just having like a a real shitty day, or whatever. Because like I realize that, people can't like, you know, read minds or whatever, so they're not gonna know unless, you tell them. So,
Yeah,
but
you wouldn't want that superpower anyway. Being able to read everybody's mind, you'd be like, "Oh my god."
oh, the thing, I I I can only imagine like the things that, like I think I have like a pretty good idea of like what people are thinking, just based off like, like their little idiosyncrasies or whatever. But like I I I think I would like learn way too much if I could read people's
Well,
minds
the
and
reason
whatnot.
why people are like, "I hate how people are two-faced." Like, I say that too, but the whole reason is we're not ready for the realness. We're not ready for what people really, really, truly think. And its problem is because our minds are so brainwashed to believe that, just to constantly be about comparing and judging, which I have a problem with. I think we're built on a rocky
Yeah.
foundation. I think people have a really bad structure to follow, not when it comes to the government or politics, but when it comes to just being a person in general. I think we took a completely wrong turn somewhere, and people now think the best thing for them to do is to constantly judge and compare to what someone has or what they don't have. And it's like, just don't even worry about that. Realize like you can do whatever you want, as long as it's not affecting anybody, you shouldn't be wrong in doing so.
Well, and kind of going back to podcasting in of itself, and going back to Joe Rogan, I find it fascinating that like people will flip out on Joe because like he'll have Alex Jones on, or vis-a-vis, like he'll have a conversation with Bernie Sanders, or Ben Shapiro, and that's, those are, too controversial or whatever, or like the fact that even like you and I are talking, like the fact that people are the fact that people in society get nervous by just like having honest and open conversations like we're having right now, to me, that's kind of, it's scary to me that just having open conversations is now considered edgy and like, like groundbreaking or something, because it used to not. I mean, maybe it always was that way, but it certainly seems like people were more open to it like a couple decades ago. I don't know. I mean, I'm 24, so
I
I
mean,
haven't been around that
I'm
long. But
21, so like I've seen, when cartoons were amazing, at least in my opinion, but I've seen it
yeah,
change and I've seen it adapt to be a younger and audience, and I've seen the world kind of progress in a way. I remember going to the bus stop, even sound like my parents or something, but like going with a CD player, listening to like Panic at the Disco or Linkin Park or something, and having that one CD in there. And then now every kid has a million songs just on their tip of their like phone. It's like, you have to look at though, like the world's ever so changing. It's becoming awesome, and it's just becoming a little bit more closed off in a way. I think a lot of people need to look at perspectives a little bit more and realize like sometimes there's more important things than your device. Sometimes there's more important things than what you think. Like, you don't need to be hurting somebody just because you're experiencing a conflict. I mean, the world, we're a constant learning environment. We're constantly building a progress until the day we die. And I think so much of your people's time is spent on either being comfortable or judging others, when a lot of it can just be put towards whatever you want to truly do. Like, some dude doesn't agree with you, then don't let it bother you. Just fucking do your thing, man. Live your life. You didn't decide, like, hey, I'm gonna go to college or whatever because someone told me to. No, went to college because you probably thought like that's what you were supposed to do. Am I right?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it's interesting that you bring that up because I mean, like a lot of people, and I'm sure that being a millennial, you kind of got the same thing that if you don't go to college, you're not going to be successful. I mean, that's kind of all the high school
Yeah.
counselors and whatnot.
That's my exact reason for going to college, was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I'm just going to go do this. So if people ask me, I'll say I'm in school. I'm in school.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's interesting because when I when I so like I said, I'm originally from Colorado. So senior year, like my parents, my mom and my stepdad, my parents are divorced. My biological parents are. My biological dad is back in Colorado, and so basically, like my mom and stepdad, they said that they were going to move to Florida at the end of my senior year, and I mean, I could come if I wanted, or I could stay in Colorado, and I just kind of decided, what, I was 18 at that point. I mean, I had traveled, but I hadn't like lived anywhere else. So I was kind of like, well, shoot, if I have the opportunity to like live in Florida, like for one, the winters are like a lot better than Colorado.
Yeah.
So I
You
mean, I
wanted to
just can't.
experience a change too.
Yeah, and that was mainly the reason why I wanted to go. Um, so when I got out here to Florida, I actually took a gap year and like just kind of did my own thing. I really worked on, the podcast and kind of building that up. So then when I went back to school, I had to go to a community college for like in 2.5 years. It took it took
Don't
me a little
knock it,
longer.
bro. I mean, I graduated from a community college too. A lot of people, I just want to put in that a lot of people take that and say, oh, it's just a community college education. It was like, yeah, but I still attempted and I still tried to benefit my own life by going to college. I think it works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. I
Oh,
don't.
sure.
I think I'm saying, I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just trying to highlight the other side to like the whole point. Like, you're supposed to do what you feel like is right for you, but I don't think
Right.
what's right for you should be harming somebody else. But that's just based on my development through life and my changes through life. I realized I have to try and see all perspectives. I think people need that a little bit. I think even if you don't agree with someone, you still have to see from their train of thought and their way of thinking. But realize that's not yours. You don't have to change your claims to fit their narrative, but you shouldn't act on aggression because they don't believe in the same thing as you.
Right. So kind of going on with what you're saying, with the whole college thing. So I went to this community college for like 2.5 years, and then during that time, like I found out about this technical writing program that the University of South Florida offers. And originally, I was going to go for just like a generic business degree, but then I kind of just discovered this technical writing thing, which is like writing and working with multimedia, and I'm like, well shit, that's actually what I'm interested in, and like that's kind of what I'm already doing with my podcast. So then I kind of decided to pursue that, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. But like, had I just gone for the generic business degree that everyone was pushing in high school, I don't think I would be as happy or not even so much happy because that's such a cliched term, but I don't think I would be doing what I'm supposed to be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel
So
like you need time too. You know, you don't want to be waiting 70 years, but sometimes it takes that long for you to figure out what you're doing. You know, it could be 10 years, you could be 5 years old and decide what you want to do for the rest of your life, or you could be 90 and still not know. I think it hits people at different rates based on what they choose. You know what I mean? I think the answer lies dormant inside us all, and one day, one random coincidence, whatever thing kind of awakens it in us. Like, oh shit, like this is what I want to do. And it takes, you know, I hope people find it earlier. But in a world where you're seen to be structured in a way where that's comfortable and that doesn't offend people, and that people that have a giant thing of creativity is kind of a little bit lacking, at least in my opinion, only when it becomes to, you look at everything that's already been created and people constantly saying, well, that's because that guy stop right there. Stop doing that. Stop comparing that he had more money than me. Oh, he had better creativity than me. Okay, but you're also you for a reason. You're not him. You're not Bill Gates. You're not Elon Musk. You're not designed to build Teslas. You know, you're designed for something else in this world. You have a purpose. You just have to figure out what it is.
yeah, well, and I mean, so one of the other things that you brought up in one of your last podcasts too, the one that I was listening to with Robert,
Did it involve shit, or
was
did it involve anything that happened to do with Bigfoot?
well, it was that same podcast. One of the things that you guys
That's like all my
brought,
podcasts.
but listen, man, I can go off on like a 4 hour, rant about Alex Jones and the government and frickin' turning frogs gay. But anyway, one of the things that you guys brought up early on, which really struck me, because, and I feel like as podcasters, we're kind of in a unique boat, but like the technical writing thing, and whatever you do professionally, like that's what you do professionally, but the podcast is kind of who you are, and I feel kind of like the same way. Now I'm also trying to get to the point where I can do the podcast professionally, and now with things like Anchor and ad monetization and things like PayPal and Streamlabs, it is definitely more possible than it was when I first started podcasting to kind of, monetize the thing. And I think that's awesome. I think, as long as you're committed to, doing something, even if it's just a hobby, you can make money on it. It might take 15 years, but I think if you're dedicated and passionate about something, no matter what it is, you can eventually make money at it,
I
and
think
make it
you can
your
test
livelihood.
a true person's character by just having a conversation, and you can test like what a person's about, and without making claims, by just experience. I think with podcasting you can relate that to anything. You know, it's an escape from the constant strain of life that we're all kind of going through today, at least most of the world is going through, not just in America but anywhere. You find people seeming like they're on autopilot a lot of the time, which I have a problem with, because
Oh yeah.
I see a person like, this is what I'm doing, this is what, and they get comfortable set in that. Like a lot of times, you know, I'm accused of doing it myself. I don't want to go out because either too hot, there's two things. Yes, but if you do that too many times, you might miss an experience. You might miss something that would be awesome. Like, you know, someone at the store, everyone got free groceries or something. But also at the same time, you might, like I said, I have to look at both perspectives. You might you might just miss out on being in a school shooting because you decided to stay home from school. That's like you got to take the ins and outs.
Right.
There's goods to bads to everything. You risk anything just by waking up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Your life
I'm
is constantly on the line. And I think a lot of people lose track of that. And they got to realize, you know, what's a short life of nothing but enjoyment and love and everything you could possibly want that makes you as happy as can be, compared to a long life of boringness where you're just feeling like you're a robot, like an android. I'm like, we already have Alexa and all these weird Sophia robots coming out now. Everything's turning into cyborg animatronic type shit. We don't want to be like that. We want to be our own individual. Like I want you to know me for Robbie. I don't want you to know me for anything else. I want you to understand that everything I'm telling you, everything I'm talking about is just stuff I want to know. Like you told me, how do you structure your show? I said I structure my show basically just a conversation. Like it's me asking you how, I want to know. And you're like, can we cuss on it? I'm like, yeah, cuss, be real, be you. I don't want to
Yeah.
know I've had people come on and play a character and then open up in the podcast about being a character, not being the real them. And I'm like, well, tell me the real them, because I'll have to delete all this other shit you were feeding me. Like, because I want to know you. I want to experience you and understand, like, oh, he thinks this way. Just because I don't agree, I see his side.
Yeah, well, I mean, and so the other thing was when I first started, podcasting, like I wouldn't really say I was, playing a character, but because I was younger, and part of the thing too was when I was getting started, I was really hoping to get onto AM radio because I started in 2008, so podcasting wasn't really a thing back then, and radio you have to be a lot more uh, well, subdued kind of because it's controlled by the FCC and whatnot. So, I would kind of play a character, and then I actually, right before I left Denver, I actually went into like one of the radio stations, and I was actually at like a political conference, and one of the guys who was doing local took like a look at what took like a listen to some of my stuff and was like, I would really like to get onto the station. He talked to his manager. The station manager liked me, but then the station manager like contacted his boss, and basically, long story short, they weren't going to let me on because I was too young at the time. I was only like 18, and I didn't have a college degree. So the radio guy who I was talking to was actually like, "Hey, man, I think you ought to just continue doing like this podcasting thing. Radio is kind of dying off anyway." So at that point, I kind of pivoted and I started listening to like Adam Carolla and Joe Rogan, and I really like those two guys and what they were doing with their format. So I just kind of decided, you know what, I'm not going to try and be like a radio personality. I'm just going to be me, and
People are going to
like if
love
I talk
you
about
and hate you for how you act, but people are loving or hating you. That's the
yeah.
realest way you can be, and I commend you for that, because that's awesome. You know, a lot of people don't choose to be real anymore. I think, like with Trump, a lot of people see him as like, he's crazy, he's nuts, he's ridiculous, he's an idiot. I'm like, he's being outlandish for a reason. He's playing a character role because you're talking about him either way, whether it's good news or bad news. He's been quoted saying there's no bad publicity, it's all good. No matter how you're talking about him, you're still mentioning the Trump brand, which I try and tell people, like, he does it for a reason. He does it because if that's truly what he wants to do and that's truly how he wants to act, then okay, that's his personality though. But you're still talking about him. You're still consuming your life with problems or whatever you think he has, when really he's doing his objective by getting you to talk about him. And that doesn't mean you have to ignore him or something. I'm like, no, just understand people are who they are. They're going to play who they want to be. They're going to do whatever they want. I think just stop giving a shit about others and start, I mean, not like that, but stop giving a shit about what someone else is consumed with, and realize they're just people. They're going to be who they are. You can't change everyone, and you shouldn't have to change everyone. Just be yourself and try your best. If everyone did that, the world would be a hell of a lot better.
Well, the other thing too that I think we get caught up in too is it's interesting that you bring up being real and whatnot, because I 100% agree with you. I think we have like in a society, I think that we're as a society, we put like way too much stock in like, in like the president of the United States and like the president's personality and like all of these other like celebrities and what they're doing. Like, to be honest, like I really don't care like what, Kim Kardashian or like, some other big celebrity name, like fill in the blank. I don't really care what they think, because most of the time they're just like playing characters or whatever, like even off screen they're always acting and whatnot. But but I find people like you to be fascinating, and people who are real. I think that's one of the reasons why people like Joe Rogan get so much traction, is because like I get the feeling that Joe's not playing a character, Joe's being himself. And I mean, I think that's the other kind of great thing about YouTube and podcasting, is like, yeah, like there are lots of personalities, but then there are also like real people like you and I who are just doing our own thing. And I think people are really kind of starving for that these days. So,
We're all starving for attention. I think we all look for a role model, when I think the true role model we need to have is it's at people, man. It's people in general. Everyone is a
yeah.
structure that you have to look at and try and decipher what you want to roll yourself by. You can't just look at Trump and see, well, he's the president of the United States, so we have to act like him. It's like, no, you are who you are. You're Nate. You're gonna do, or I don't know why I said Nate, but you're gonna become who you are. You know what I mean? You're gonna be who you want to be. You're going to be Sam. You're gonna do what you want to do. Like Sam, I am. That's the book you should model your life by. If you're gonna model a
Yeah.
book, like you are who you are going to be. So just be that person. Look and see where you see faults. Look where you see things that are correct. Look where you see and take your ins and outs through life. Listening to myself through older podcasts, which I don't do. I don't like to do it because I realize how stupid I was in that train of thought, where my questions were so uneducated, so unresponsive, seen for the comedic view. And I was like, man, I was just so dumbed down to the real parts of like what I can truly accomplish with my brain. Like I felt like I was using it at half a capacity, and seeing it now, trying to like just podcasting with so many, like hundreds of people, just and from all over the world. And I'm like, I'm getting everything, and it's not too much. It's not what I thought it was going to be. An hour conversation is not much at all. Sometimes 2 hours is not much. But there are people out there that make you feel drained, and I realize that too. But I also try and see it from every perspective. When you open your mind, you open the world to a new just perspective in general that a lot of people don't realize, and they think it's this cruel bitch that's going to hold you down. I'm like, it's not. You can change it if you want to change it, but if you don't have the drive to change it, you're going to keep eating the same shit sandwich every day.
Yeah, the other thing, and I don't want to make too much out of this, because to me it's not really a big deal. But I mean, I also have a physical disability. I'm in a wheelchair, and so that certainly has been a contributing factor in my life too. But I mean, that is such a like it's a hindrance. I don't let that affect me either. And I mean, the only reason why I bring that up is because I think that
A lot of people judge
people
you on being based in a wheelchair.
oftentimes um I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said a lot of people judge you or kind of treat you differently because you're in a wheelchair.
um I mean, that one's, I wouldn't say. I mean, a lot of people do. I think once people get to know me or chat with me, they realize, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And this kind of goes back to my whole thing of, obviously, people. I mean, like, I try and be optimistic about people, but then again, there are going to be people who are assholes, and they're going to judge me because I'm in a wheelchair. So I don't focus on the negative. And it's also like, listen, like, and I don't try and get on this high horse either, but like, listen, you want to, bitch at like how much your life sucks. I'm in a wheelchair, and like, I don't, bitch at life endlessly. So, if you're, I mean, like, that's the other thing, is like, I just think that like a lot of people like to, be negative. They like to judge, someone because they're feeling inadequate about their own life. And, I think that, like you said, if we just, were open-minded and, talking to people, I think people would, realize that, like, oh, wow, Sam is not just a guy in a wheelchair, and he's not just,
Yeah,
some
he's an awesome
right-wing
dude.
guy,
He
or just like, Joe on the street, or whatever. I don't know. I
I
think,
think I try and rationalize why people in wheelchairs get aggressive towards other people that try and do stuff for them, because it is, I have friends that are like physically handicapped in different things, not just being in a wheelchair, but they always
yeah,
tell me, they're like, I get treated very differently. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, people like do stuff more for me. And I'm like, does that affect you that people are doing that? Because I would love if someone held the door open for me. And he goes, no, but they're automatically assuming I can't do it myself. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh shit. When he said that, I was like, that chalks up to why you hold the door open for a wheelchair guy. And he's like, I don't need you to do that shit for me, because he's so sick of it. He's so sick of people assuming he can't do it himself.
the yeah, I understand that one doesn't bother me too much. The one that I get sometimes, which really pisses me off, is when people will speak like really slowly to me because they think that I'm like retarded or something, and
Have you
so
have you heard Tom Segura's joke about that?
yeah,
He said his name's Kevin. He's in a wheelchair. He's not retarded, because you'll give him that freaking, "Are you okay, fella? Are you okay?" Like treating them like they're a baby. He goes, "I don't." He's like, "I don't need you to talk to me like that. I'm a person. I just can't use my fucking legs."
and people will do that, or they'll speak like super slowly to me, and I'll be like, hurry the fuck up, jerkwad, and spit it out. I don't have time to be here all day. And then they'll be like, and see, like, yeah, obviously people are going to make judgments and about me in a wheelchair, and I don't have necessarily a problem with that because we make judgments, based on our situation every single day. But I think it's just kind of that ignorance of, and regardless of whether you're in a wheelchair or whether you're a minority, like I just don't like to make assumptions about, people
Yeah,
as much as
that
possible.
makes you an awesome person, because a lot of people don't realize that's how we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be making assumptions and claims on things we don't truly understand. And like my one buddy, he's in a wheelchair. I have steps in my house. And he's like, "Oh, you don't have wheelchair accessible steps in your house?" I'm like, "No, because I'm not disabled. I understand you
Right.
are. I'm sorry for that. But also, I know him really well. So I'll be like, just limp your ass up the steps." Like as a
Well, and
joke, but in all terms of reality, I understand. Like I wouldn't truly be like, climb, climb. I wouldn't be like that. But he likes that because he likes, I'm still being his friend, the friend Robbie he knows, the friend that is going to joke with him about anything, about Bigfoot, about whatever that we're interested in talking about together. And he realizes I don't highlight the aspect of him not being able to use something. Bill Burr said
right.
it best. He doesn't have a six pack. He doesn't have the body for a six pack. No matter how hard he tries, genetically, he's not able to have one. So he's not going to take any time in trying to be a supermodel, be some type of person that a lot of people try and glorify as their role structure. And I'm like, you got to realize you are different from that person. Okay. You don't use your legs, so you're not going to be a marathon runner. Like if you want to do that and you want to prove the odds, go ahead. No one's stopping you. But at the same time, a lot of like people that are disabled or realize they're never going to be able to accomplish that, they lose, they don't dive into that goal anymore because they realize it's a waste of time when they can be doing something that they actually really truly want to do deep down in.
The one question that I get, like, a lot of the time, and it kind of drives me crazy, is people like ask, like, well, Sam, what would you do if you could walk or something? And I'm like, well, I don't know. What would you do if you could fly like Superman? And they're kind of like, what? And so my whole thing on that is um like Obviously, like unless there's some like breakthrough technology, which I'm not discounting, like I'm probably just not going to like be able to fully walk as well as some other people do, and like that's fine. Like I don't think about my disability like that much. Like I said, it's a factor, but it's not something that like runs my life
Yeah, you
or
don't sit there and put it into like a depressive slump where that's all. I'm never going to use my legs again. So there's no point in doing this, no point in doing that. It's not the right way to think. You got to understand, like, okay, well, I'm not going to let this hold me down, though. I'm not going to let this make me so hereditary where I never leave the house and don't truly become who I want to become.
Exactly. I'm like so what my legs don't work. I've got I'm going to school. I've got an awesome fucking podcast. I get to chat with people. I have great friends in my real life and online, like in a way, like my life is more exciting than my able-bodied friends who just work regular 9 to 5s. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just going through the motions, I guess it's like it's all how you look at it's all how you look at things.
Life, I
So
mean,
you can either choose.
life is a journey we're all on, dude. We're all trying to decipher what we want to be in this world. And I think,
Yeah.
like you were saying, like you're still doing like awesome shit. And like it gave me the opportunity to be able to sit down and talk with you, dude. And like that's where I say technology is a benefit as well, because the fact that I was able to sit down and connect with you, even though I've never met you, and I don't know if I'm ever going to go down to where you live and be able to come across you, but I was able to have such an amazing experience with you on my podcast and be able to talk to someone that is just another person out there trying to become who they want to become. And you're doing that. And I want to give you a minute here at the end to kind of plug your own podcast. I want people to understand, like, you know, if you're interested in things and you want to do something, you can do it. Like, I want people to understand that a little bit more. And you have such a amazing like train of thought with thinking too and understanding of the world, and I want people to be able to find that.
Well, thanks, man. So, I'll just kind of keep this short. You can find my podcast. It's the Whitfield Report, and you can find it at anchor.fm/, Whitfield Report. That's the main podcast page. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at somebody_NGC, and Facebook page is the Whitfield Report, and my website is thesamwhitfield.com, where you can reach out to me or something if someone wants to come on the podcast or whatever. And I just want to give a shout out to you, to Out of the Blank podcast. I think your concept, just chatting with people, is amazing, and I think it's something that we need more of. So I would love to have you on my show sometime when you're
Anytime, dude.
available. And
Let me shoot me like a day in advance, and I'll make sure it happens, man.
so awesome. So thanks for having me on.